Welcome to Move the Stairs, episode 78. We are recording on Tuesday, March 7th, and we're so happy you're joining us for today's exciting conversation. Feels like a second Monday.
Yeah, it just feels like Monday sometimes. That's right. We're excited today because we're going to be joined by Dr. Sibyl Swift. She's the Chief Science Officer, Vice President of Regulatory Affairs. And also we're joined by Lance Blundell. He's cbdMD's General Counsel. And they're going to be talking about how the recent FDA decision is impacting a lot of companies out there.
You know, guys, a few weeks ago, we talked about the FDA decision from an industry and an association point of view. But today we're going to look at this decision through another lens. And we're going to talk about how this decision, or maybe you call it a non-decision, impacts building customer loyalty from the company side.
That's right. Yeah, lack of decision here, perhaps.
Right.
cbdMD was one of the first companies that the Wall Street Journal reached out to talk about, to discuss this decision or lack thereof. So we're going to hear how they handled that interview in our Insider Media Relations segment.
And as always, we're going to talk with our guests from cbdMD about what they're looking forward to in Q2, Q3, and Q4. About what this decision will mean for CBD companies that are trying to build a resilient CBD brand. So without further ado, let's get started.
Let's get started here. We have Dr. Sibyl Swift. Thank you for joining us. And Sibyl, can we call you Sibyl?
Absolutely, please.
All right, very good. And then Lance, thank you for joining us on this Move the Stairs podcast. So we appreciate your time today. We know you're quite busy. We know that one of the biggest challenges for a CBD company this day and age is building customer loyalty. A lot of choices out there for consumers. This is at a time when there's so many companies, so many products to choose from. So we want to talk about building customer loyalty today.
So I'm interested, Sibyl and Lance, were you guys surprised at the FDA decision to kick the CBD regulation back to Congress? And Sibyl, why don't we start with you?
No.
No,
We're not surprised. I mean,
a resounding no.
Exactly.
No. I mean, looking at all of the nothing burger statements that the agency has put out over the last 2.5 years, I think it's directly in line with what they have done and what they have said. It almost seems as though they are resistant to do their job. And now with the kicking the can to Congress, it's telling someone else to do something that is within their wheelhouse and that they have the skill set for. So if nothing else, we were disappointed, frustrated, I think, like a lot of people out there are. But no, we were not surprised.
And Lance, what was your thought?
So prior to that letter coming out, or the press release, I guess is how they announced it, Sibyl and I sort of ran over scenarios, spoke with some insiders in Washington. I can't say that we were surprised, although that decision out of the FDA was low on the list of things we thought they were going to do, given that they've spent so much time and so much money looking at this issue. The fact that we've tried to give them information that they claim, isn't available, but we've tried to give it to them, just not in the way they wanted it, because the FDA is trying to control the narrative. And we were very concerned if, we sort of followed their guidelines and suggestions, that, for lack of a better word, they would bury the lead or they would misinterpret the data. We're aware of other companies who've engaged with the FDA, tried to present them data, been told to do a particular thing that turned out to not be in their best interests. Sibyl used to be at the agency, and so we have some inside information into how they think. All of that is a way of saying not unexpected, but also we felt that they would do something with all the information they have, and they did nothing. And that's somewhat disappointing.
And it's very disappointing. Absolutely.
Well, it presents a unique challenge too, because you and so many other companies are in the same boat. But what cbdMD is doing, and what we kind of talked about in our pre-interview here, is you're empowering your customers to say, hey, reach out to your legislators. You let them know how you feel, because now those legislators are going to have a direct impact on what may or may not happen here in the future. So how did you kind of come up with this, this tactic to reach out to people, to engage them and reaching out to people in Congress who are ultimately now going to be at the end of making this decision.
So I'll take the lead on this one. So we've been very active and very engaged in DC. We're also active in the States, although through proxies in the States, through some of our trade groups, we're not actively lobbying states ourselves. Dr. Swift has spoken in several state task force listening sessions. In DC, we're members of the Natural Products Association, the NPA, and through the NPA and through our membership with the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, we have been in DC probably 2 to 3 times a year for the last, call it 3 years, let's say. So we are being active there. We have recently come to the conclusion, and with the FDA's announcement, we have come to the conclusion that the public, through a campaign of informing them that their access is being restricted to dietary supplements. And it's not just CBD, although that's what our company does. I consider CBD to sort of be the tip of the spear in that the FDA is taking liberties with our ingredient, but they've been taking liberties with several other ingredients recently as well. And not to sidetrack from CBD, but the NAC decision a year ago and the recent NMN decision all sort of smack of FDA overreach and broad interpretation of statutes that don't really say what the FDA says they do. With that said, the recent efforts, we are involved in a letter writing campaign. There are several congresspeople who are actively engaged in calling the FDA to task. Some of that has been made public. Some of it will be coming to light in the next month or so. We've shared our toxicity data, very comprehensive portfolio with several senators' offices. We've spoken to the Help Committee. We've spoken to Energy and Commerce. This same data is accepted in Europe from their Food Standards Agency and in the UK from their Food Safety Agency. And we, sort of jokingly say, are the rats speaking in silly accents and driving on the right-hand side of the road? Because apparently our data is good enough in Europe. All of that comes around to say that there is now a greater need to educate the public, to have the public right there, Congress people. We also think that given that it's an election cycle coming up, there's a debt ceiling issue. We've got Ukraine. There's lots of issues that take precedence over dietary supplements. Let's be honest, we are not as important as those items. However, we do need Congress to act, and therefore we need to be moving both the public in a grassroots campaign and through active lobby with us and some of the other leading companies to get something done. Otherwise, we're going to be sitting here for another several years.
Sibyl, how about you? What are your thoughts about that?
I echo what Lance said. I think that the more opportunities you have to inform not only your customers, but their constituents, and to utilize that large number of voices, you start getting people to understand the landscape, to understand what it is that's being taken away. I think that they help to elevate this particular issue to, whomever's representing them, whether it be in the House or in the Senate, so that their representatives and senators understand exactly how important this issue is to their constituents, right? So whether it be from actual legislation or some other path, I think they'll be more open to listening if we can engage from a number of different fronts.
Absolutely. Yeah, engage those customers. Yeah, you mentioned you're disappointed, and you're certainly not alone. All right. But let's talk about how you're dealing with it. You're doing more than just shrugging your shoulders. And at M&C Communications, we're always looking at things that are challenges and really looking at them as opportunities. So is this maybe a way to engage with customers maybe in a different ways, or an opportunity here to build their trust, increase their loyalty to your company, cbdMD?
So do you mind if I start with this one? So this is going to be the legal analysis is that the FDA's position makes it very difficult for us to message our customers in the way we would like. Typically in the dietary supplement space, what happens is there's an ingredient, and in this case, CBD is a commodity ingredient. It's not special in any way. It's not proprietary. It's not patented. So you have an ingredient, and in order for your ingredient to stand out in the marketplace, you go do clinical studies and you prove what it does. There's something called the structure function claim, which I'm sure many of your listeners are aware of. Right now, cbdMD has conducted a human clinical trial, double-blind placebo, IRB registered. I mean, a very legitimate, a drug company would conduct a similar study to do an exploratory study to find out sort of what they want to do. We've done a dog study with Colorado State University. The human clinical was with the University of South Carolina. These are all very legitimate studies where we did achieve statistical significance and proved that our products have functional benefits. Because of the FDA's position, we are precluded from talking about it. So the opportunities are there for companies like ours. There's a handful of companies who are willing to do this. And to be honest, and I don't want to, disparage any CBD companies out there, but most CBD companies, and we've talked to a lot of them, saw an opportunity. And I'm not even saying their products are good or bad. They saw an opportunity. They entered the market. They did not do the requisite toxicity studies. They did not do the requisite clinical studies to study structure function claims. The problem is those companies are allowed to flourish in this environment. The opportunity to message our consumers about the FDA's position is probably, it's come to a head now because of what the FDA did. So there is an opportunity there, but we've always prided ourselves on being an industry leader in science, regulatory compliance. By way of example, very boring things, but our labels are compliant in all 50 states. Many of the products out there don't have the correct state warnings on them. They're not following the labeling rules. And so the product in the bottle might be fine, but it's not compliant. And so the issue we have is that we are precluded from the opportunities that we should have through the FDA's action. So I really don't view this as an opportunity. It's more of an opportunity for lower quality companies, fly-by-night companies to get away with selling products without following the rules. And that bothers us given the amount of money we've invested and the dedication we have to science and quality products.
That's really interesting. So let me ask you, so I'm clear, there's no way that you could message your customers and say, Congress needs to hear from you if you're interested in getting this industry regulated, something of that nature. Is that not appropriate, or that is appropriate?
No, that's sort of what I said. It's come to a head in that regard.
Right.
We've done some campaigns before, some surveys or some sign this petition campaigns. One of the larger problems with the consumer products company is you really have to walk a fine line with being political and ask people to sign things. It's a great cause. CBD customers are typically well educated. They're required to do their own research.
Right.
So it's a good customer population to do that. And yes, that opportunity is there, but then you're sending out, right? You're sending customers a request to write a letter to their senator. And now you're sort of potentially crossing a line. And a lot of customers might just say, you know what, I don't want my dietary supplement company to be political. So you run the risk of losing customers. So it's a very fine line. For that reason, and Sibyl can speak more to this, for that reason, we've identified several trade groups out there in the dietary supplement space that are very active on the consumer side, have giant databases, and they message people about access, about restrictions. And so we're going to work through third parties to do that. We think that that's probably a better way to do it.
Okay.
Sibyl, that's interesting. So do you think that, I totally get how you're walking the fine line here, especially in the current political climate. Do you think that then it is an opportunity to build customer loyalty specifically to cbdMD, or is this, we just got to get this done so that we can then go forward and really start doing the work that will build that customer loyalty?
So I think every opportunity that we have, every chance that we have to speak to our customers in a way, and it's not just marketing our product, right? It's to explain to them what we do to them and what we can do for them and what we're bringing to them. Lance was he was suggesting and describing in a way, as of right now, the current regulations are set such that if you don't want to be at risk of a warning letter, have a product. Take this. Trust me, it works. I can't really tell you what it does. I'm going to use some words. It'll make you feel better. Just trust me. And that's really where we're at right now. And anyone can go out there and do that. So what we're doing is taking this space that's now very apparent between what the agency is saying. And look, they're messaging about supplements and CBD in very similar ways. consumers, supplements are dangerous. Consumers, CBD is dangerous. They're speaking about the industry that they regulate as though it is a massive Wild West and everything out there is a concern. They're not presenting things in terms of facts. And, there are some bad players in every industry. They're going to be bad players where people who see this white space in a gray area and they run with it, right? It happens. It happens everywhere. So I think right now this is our opportunity to really message to our customers and most CBD users about what the product can do so that they can discern what it can't, and explaining to them some of the lines between what a supplement is and a drug is, which the agency really is not doing a good job of. They're just calling everything bad actors and everyone bad actors and suggesting that it can harm you. So it's an opportunity for us not only to explain to people, as Lance has done a really good job of saying, the access and what it is that they could be losing, because I don't think people understand it quite like that. They don't understand the depth and the breadth of the issue as it stands. It also gives us an opportunity to help them, provide them with education that we've supported. Lance described all of our safety studies and our clinical studies so well. We can speak to our products in a very educated and informed manner and tell our customers what they do. We can also, as we're, considering some of the best ways to do this without throwing shade on other people, but saying here are some of the things that we can't say. And so messaging to customers about the lines between supplements and drugs and what supplements can do for you. I think that's something else that we can consider how to start implementing in messaging.
That's fascinating. And the messaging is so important, but yet you really are in this almost catch-22 situation, which is very frustrating. So here at MNC, we're all former journalists, and that experience really helps us prepare our clients to take advantage of just about every media opportunity that comes their way, because we want to position them as industry leaders and experts, just like the two of you are, and people who can give really great interviews. And we call that insider media relations.
So with that, you were one of the first companies that national media interviewed when this decision came down. So I'm curious, what have you done to build those relationships? Because you don't get that phone call by mistake. What work have you put in to establish relationships with journalists in the industry and in national media so that you're top of mind when something like this happens?
So I think it's a several-pronged approach. One, you don't want to draw attention to your company if you're not actually doing the right things. And so first and foremost, build the base. Make sure that you stand on a very well-supported foundation. You have all of your compliance in check, your quality, the manufacturing documentation, the right certifications. You have done the safety work. You've done the efficacy work. At that point, it's okay if you draw attention to your brand. It's a good thing, right? You want people to seek you out. Then it's about communicating it. And how do you break it down into consumable chunks that's very dense material, but you make it understandable and relatable on a customer level? I think those are the key tenets that are first and foremost. Build the base, do the work. And then in terms of messaging, you can't be shy, right? You can't be afraid of drawing eyes to you and your business and your organization. Know the material, know your space, know it well. Our experience so far with the media has been quite good in that we reach out. I mean, between Lance and myself, we reach out to people. I believe it was Lance that actually reached out to the Wall Street Journal first after the interview with Dr. Woodcock and suggested that, hey, that's an interesting take. If you'd like to hear the other side of the story from someone who's being regulated by this group, talk to us. And then you present facts. It's informed opinions, but it's facts. And if you present them in a reputable and, easily understandable, consumable way, you start to develop that dialogue and that rapport.
And I'd like to add something, and it's a shameless plug for our company. We have Sibyl, and when you have somebody like Dr. Swift, who spent almost 6 years in the Office of Dietary Supplement Programs, who built several of their programs. The FDA just put an ingredient list out yesterday. I'm not sure if you guys have seen it yet or not. It's like 20 ingredients. And I was going through the list with Sibyl, and she's basically going, I worked on that one. I did that. When you have somebody as credible as Sibyl, it makes it easier. And it's self-promotion because nobody else has somebody like Sibyl who has that experience. There's a handful of companies that I would say are very legitimate. They have good science. They're investing, and this is not a cheap thing. And again, you go back to what it takes to be a dietary supplement company. It takes $1 million to do a safety study. And if you don't have $1 million to do a safety study, you probably should not be bringing new ingredients to market. You can go buy an ingredient from an ingredient supplier that has spent the money. You can ride the clinical studies of that ingredient supplier. And that's when you get into the branded ingredient space. And there's many high quality branded ingredient providers out there. We work with several of them for our functional products. But if you don't have $1 million to do a safety study, your ingredient is not proven to be safe if it's a new ingredient. And so having somebody like Dr. Swift being able to do those studies and then being willing to talk to people about it in both trade group settings. Sibyl is on several working groups of very large trade organizations. We're not on their board, so you don't even know we're there. We're working with GRMA, which is the Grocery and Retailer Manufacturing Association. We're helping them set standards. All of those things build your credibility. And when somebody wants to come ask a question, they look to a credible person. And so part of that credibility is built from within, but you also have to start advocating in a very intelligent way for what you're doing. And it's not about your company. I say it's a shameless self-promotion because we have Sibyl. Sibyl is cbdMD. She's our chief science officer. But there's a handful of companies out there that have high quality scientists. Their formulations are good. They're GMP qualified or GMP, qualified by a third party, not just by themselves. Those are the sorts of things that allow you to reach out to media and building good relationships with companies like yours. There's a handful of PR companies out there, and really paying attention to the trades, who's writing the articles, and building your relationships with those people as an expert. That is going to lead you, whoever you are, to being able to communicate as an expert, and then people will pay attention. When I reached out to the Wall Street Journal, I'm the one who did it. I used Sibyl's name. Right. I said, look, we're experts. We have Dr. Sibyl Swift. She can provide you context. Just so happens that I also provided context because they had other questions. That's how you build that rapport with media.
So to use Sibyl's words, you've built the base already. You've checked all the boxes to say, okay, we're doing all of these things so we feel comfortable enough to reach out to media. But why do you reach out to media? Is it something that you're trying to do to move the needle for regulation? Is it something to do to build customers and get your name out there as a company? At the core, at the heart of it, why is it important for you to outreach to media? And Sibyl, I think you sound like the media guru, so I'll toss this over to you.
That's frightening. No, it's if you only rely upon one method of communication with your customers, I don't think that your message really resonates. And one of the things that we really pride ourselves on here at cbdMD is that we care. And so we're not just going to send marketing emails and marketing messages. I think it's also important to reach your customers on a number of different levels and through different communication venues and modes. We've got a few that are available to us, but we've had conversations about this in the last couple of weeks. A lot of them are very closed, and Lance can speak to this directly in terms of our efforts to get onto national platforms and to get onto television networks and what have you. So you only have so many methods to reach your customer and make sure that your message resonates. And so I think that any company that is actively building a brand and wants their customers to understand the multitude of different things that they do, you use all of your tools.
Yeah, I in this particular area as well, I'd like to add that there is a counter programming element to it, because I would say 50 to 75% of the media articles on this topic are just flat out wrong. They're not even close. Yeah. You have misreporting, you have hearsay reporting, you have parroting, you have all of the, you're all journalists, you have all of the sort of journalistic bad actors out there, the lazy journalists who read a headline and then write an article. But you also have the FDA. And I want to be very clear about this. The FDA is being disingenuous and misrepresenting the facts to the public. And when that is happening, the only way to get that out there is to go out to the media, to the journalists that are knowledgeable on the subject, and there are a handful of them, the trade press for your industry. In this case, there's a handful of dietary supplement trade press out there, the Wall Street Journal, and you have to counter program. We just listened to a podcast last week Norman Birnbaum was on it. I think he's an advisor to the Cannabis Center or the what they're trying to call a Cannabis Center. And from all evidence that we have, and we haven't talked to him directly, good guy, has his heart in the right place. He's trying to do the right thing. But some of the statements he made were, to politely put it, incorrect. And so we're looking at the transcript of that, and we're gonna sort of do an editorial on the transcript. Companies need to be active in that. And this is where, circling back to your media comment, this is how the media can be utilized to message the public, and the third party is the media, right? The filter is the media, and say what you want. If you're with the right person who's writing the right article and can present the facts, like Sibyl said, you have to take complicated facts, or maybe not complicated, but facts people don't think about normally, and present them in a way that makes it easy to digest. That often requires an intermediary or a media consultant or a media expert to help do that.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, you gave us a couple of tips, and essentially for companies that are wanting to do outreach with media. Don't be shy, as Sibyl said, and they rely on those multiple platforms. I'm curious, how much time do you devote to that effort of media outreach, especially given how muddy the waters are?
More than we want.
Yeah, you're spending more time on it than you wish.
A lot more than we want.
And
We wear multiple hats around here, and when you're trying to do all the work you need to do in a day and be nimble, it takes time, right? And we're no company in this space, with the exception of potentially Charlotte's Web, because they've been around a long time and they have some investment behind them from some large companies, has the resources to have PR departments within them. So now again, you have to reach out to a third party resource so that you can be efficient in your messaging. It's a full-time job, in and amongst the other jobs we have to do.
Yeah.
Sibyl, you were going to add to that. What were you going to say?
Nope, I think that was perfect.
That was it? Okay.
So it's important, but it is time consuming at present.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Otherwise the other person's message gets out there, right? And this is the biggest issue we have. I'm going to keep hitting the FDA. The biggest issue we have with the FDA is the public looks to the FDA as an expert. And if the FDA says something, people assume it to be true. And it is, in the dietary supplement and food space, almost never true. And I mean, look, I'll say it to them. I've said it in seminars and podcasts. The FDA needs to remove the word food, and they need to be the drug agency. And there's a movement right now to either stand up a food safety agency like they have in Europe, put experts in. Everybody at the FDA has drug experience, and I trust our FDA as much as I can as a public health agency in the drug space. They do a good job there. On the food side, I think they're sorely lacking in resources. I think they're sorely lacking in expertise. And I think Sibyl can go into this in a little more detail if anybody's interested, but the people at the FDA don't have industry experience. And a lot of the food people are drug people or not qualified to do food. And so we are in a situation where we have to use the media, or else everybody's going to see what the FDA says. And like Sibyl said, CBD is dangerous. No, it's not. And we've proven it. And in Europe, we're the only company right now who's under active risk assessment by the Food Safety Agency. They're looking at the data that proves it's safe, right? Like, we've proven it, but the FDA says it's not safe. That's a problem in this country. It's a big problem, and it's bigger than CBD.
Well, CBD business owners are constantly on the lookout for ways to strengthen their business and weather threats to their reputation and their bottom line. And it's something that we help them do. We help them find the opportunity in every challenge, even as a challenge as daunting as this one. We help them polish their reputations and prepare for the unexpected. And we call that building a resilient CBD brand. So the big question here is, what in the world do you think is going to happen in 2023? Are we going to see something finally with CBD regulation?
So you want to coordinate the no, Sibyl?
How does that look for you?
No, we're not. There's plenty of interest. As we said earlier, we're active on the Hill. We just had a talk with another staffer a couple days ago. There's interest in doing something, but the political climate and sort of the way the sausage is made on the Hill we don't think that anything is going to happen, not because people don't want to, because it's not going to be a topic that is going to be important enough in and amongst the other topics. And we sort of figure if nothing happens in the next 3 to 4 months, we're probably looking at other alternatives, including potentially a legal action against the FDA, so we can take it out of the FDA's hands and put it into the hands of a judge. So these options are all on the table, but yeah, I think it's a big no. Not because there's not interest though. There's a lot of interest. There's bipartisan support. Nobody thinks it's a bad idea. That doesn't mean it's going to get done in Washington.
So there's no omnibus bills that are coming up where you think that it could be slid into the bill?
I think there's 2 or 3. There are issues. That's an excellent question, and it shows a sophistication and understanding what's going on. The problem with doing it in omnibus bills is you got to trade something for something else, right. And so I think there's 3 bills.
Maybe we can get a lot of product together. No, I'm only kidding. So.
Yeah. We're sending a lot of CBD to DC.
There you go.
Yeah, it's just there's a couple opportunities, but they don't seem like they're going to be viable. But we're trying, and in fact, that was what the conversation with the staffer was the other day. Is we were identifying the bills and the sponsors and who would be amenable to sliding it in. But then you're playing politics, and you can't predict that right now.
It's true.
No,
absolutely.
It's always unpredictable.
Yeah.
Well, you're not the first that we've heard from that said, I don't think anything's going to happen in 2023. So we were not surprised by your answer there. But you alluded to a couple of things, talking about working maybe with some politicians and also legal action. Are those some possibilities if we're looking for a way to push this forward finally? What is cbdMD doing? Yeah, absolutely.
Going back to, there's a lot of interest on the Hill. We've talked to a lot of people. We're focusing on the committees where something will happen. Energy and Commerce on the House side and Health Committee on the Senate side. And there is interest. The problem then becomes, getting it to the floor, getting it through committee, and that's all politics. The other option, if we don't have any movement in the next probably 3 to 4 months, would be a legal action against the FDA, probably under the Administrative Procedures Act. But it's looking to put the FDA on the spot in front of a judge, have the Justice Department come in and actually start looking at some of the statements the FDA's made, and moving towards a fact-based analysis of the situation and what's going on. That's always a risk as well. But when there's no other options, and the drug companies do this, food companies do this, it's not unknown. I think Pfizer sued the FDA several times last year, and Pfizer and the FDA have a very nice relationship with each other. So it's not like that. It's not taking the FDA to task, other than just asking a court to look at what they're doing and make them do their jobs. That's really what it comes down to. So we think it's a viable option, and it also reads on several of the other things that are going on right now. NAC filed a lawsuit that came to a favorable resolution before trial. NMN is kind of in a similar situation. And what's next, right? Sibyl likes to say, I think Sibyl, the day that the FDA announced NMN no longer was a dietary ingredient, that morning, Sibyl had told 3 or 4 people she was wondering what the next ingredient was going to be. And then it dropped that afternoon. We were at a trade show. And so there's more to come. We don't know what it is. I think that's where we are. It's unfortunate, but that's where we are when the agency they're putting people's lives at risk by not making a decision, and they're leaving it up to the states. And as well-intentioned as the states are, they don't have a cadre of scientists to look at data. They have administrators and politicians trying to pass laws related to health, and it's not always a good idea.
The MPA brought up this legal action as a possibility as well. My question is, how long does something like that take? Is that years? Or is that maybe because it's presented to them, they don't even want to go to court, so they're going to start moving much faster? What do you think?
If you look,
and how is your crystal ball today?
Yeah, my crystal ball. I will tell you exactly what's going to happen. No, there's no way to know. If you look at a history of dietary supplement actions, some of them went to full decision. I think the facts in some of those were worse than our facts. Mm-hmm. The recent NMN or the recent NAC matter, I think is probably a good guidepost, where the FDA wrote very extensive enforcement discretion. And this is what I've been saying the whole time. It's not about a lawsuit. It's not about congressional action. It's about being able to sell our products on Amazon.
Right.
That's really, and I use Amazon as a catch-all for large retail.
Right.
No large retail will touch ingestible CBD products because the FDA has not taken a stand on their legality. There's a bunch of hyperbole. There's a bunch of statements. There's zero enforcement actions on the part of the FDA. There's a bunch of warning letters with no follow-up enforcement. So realistically, the FDA is tacitly allowing these products on the market. That allows a proliferation of gray market, of bad actors, of people who don't do the right science, who falsify certificates of analysis, all sorts of things, right? A legal action designed to get the FDA to agree to some recognition of this ingredient. They don't have to make it a legal food. A recognition that allows those large retailers to now engage with companies like ours, where we can prove that our products are safe, where we can prove that we've done human clinicals. That is probably 12 to 18 months before you get there. And that is you don't usually litigate for a settlement. Like, I'm a lawyer, and you litigate to win. But in this case, if you can get the FDA to agree to publish guidelines that retailers can use, I think that's a win. And that's what happened in the NAC case recently.
So while we're in this limbo time, is there any silver lining to the delay? I mean, is there anything that companies could take advantage of now while they're waiting?
I think the silver lining applies to companies who maybe are not able or willing to follow the rules. The silver lining is for the bad actors, because to be quite honest, that until we can bring this information to the public, educate our consumers on the benefits, show them what these products actually do, there is no silver lining. It's just a gray market. So I think the silver lining is not for companies like ours, unfortunately.
Regulation, a lot of people are concerned. They're, what can FDA come out with? But we see this as it's very cut and dry for companies who have built that base. Let's bring it back to where we started at the beginning of this podcast. If you've built the base, you've invested a significant amount of money in demonstrating that your product is safe and efficacious for your customers. So at the end of the day, regulations would make that investment, it would give us the return on it, right? And it would allow us to speak to our customers in a way that's meaningful. It also ensures that people don't get hurt. And so as Lance said, we're considering the litigation. We're not asking for just tacit approval or a wide open door. We're asking for FDA to take those tools that they've been using for new dietary ingredient reviews for 30 years. It's almost 30 years, right? And actually apply them to this particular botanical ingredient. Yes, you've got your quality documentation. Check. You've gone through a reputable third party, to ensure that your, quality documentation is accurate and appropriate. Check. You can demonstrate that your product and ingredient is safe based upon the way that you manufacture the product and extract the ingredient. Check. And for you to talk about it, you've gone through the process as Lance has described for a structure function claim notification. You've done the science, you've done clinical studies, and now you can speak about it to your customers. We're looking for that door to be open and someone to be checking those boxes. That would be great. And so I think everyone stands to benefit from a well-regulated market. Customers are safe. They can pursue ingredients that are efficacious, that are not at a drug level, that don't have the effects of drugs because they're not supposed to. I mean, that's the fun thing about supplements that I think FDA is misrepresenting in this entire space. You eat a supplement because it has a greater benefit than consuming that same thing in food. Is the benefit as much as a drug? No, it's not supposed to be. That's not appropriate for the standard or, for the regulations. So that's really what we're looking for. And until then, as Lance said, there is no silver lining. We're artificially limited at the level of sales we have barriers for entry in terms of communication and barriers for entry in terms of large retail organizations. So at the end of the day, no, we don't see this as anyone standing to benefit necessarily in this interim period.
Absolutely. If you don't know the rules of the game, it's really hard to play it. I mean, that's the bottom line, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, what a fabulous interview. Thank you so much to both of you, Dr. Sibyl Swift and Lance Blundell from cbdMD. We are thrilled that you joined us and took the time. And this was a great discussion. So thank you both.
Yes.
Thanks for the time.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Diane. Mitch.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Wow, they were great, weren't they? I mean, my goodness gracious. There is so much information in there. I have this list of notes that with takeaways. I mean,
I took a lot of
I was
notes,
running out of paper here.
I know.
Anyway, it was great. I thought that when they were talking about, customer loyalty and how, taking messages and putting them in bite-sized chunks to get them so people understand them, but at the same time, you're so limited in what you can say at this point. It was very interesting, but certainly, when you're out there and people see that you're talking about this and you're really working so hard on the back end to make sure people are safe, that's got to help with customer loyalty.
It does, and you could see how they have flourished with that insider media relations mindset that they have. That even though they're probably spending a lot more time on this than they want, they are dedicated to what they're doing, and so they're reaching out to the media, actually educating some of those reporters, right? Because we, as they mentioned, we have some that maybe don't know the full story.
Right.
The things that stuck with me is build that base, don't be shy. And I think that's a strong message for other companies who think, gosh, I'm so swamped with day to day, but it's important. It does help and it does work.
And I think lastly, when you're talking about what happens next, right? It's fascinating to hear that on both sides of the aisle, and we've heard this time and again that there's interest in getting this done, but the political red tape just continues to be in the way because it's not an important enough issue. And Lance brought it up compared to other worldly issues like the debt ceiling, the war in Ukraine, other things that are happening that are taking up the time of our legislature. So I thought that was really fascinating.
It is.
We have an industry that says, please, we'd like some regulation, and they're not getting it. I mean, most people are like, hey, well, look, we can skirt by and get away with it. The dedicated players in this one want the regulation. They want that master playbook.
They absolutely do. And I really hope that, if when CBD is tied to a huge issue that they're dealing with, such as opioids, and we know that clinical trial is going on right now where they're seeing if there's a correlation in how CBD can help patients and get them off of the opioids. Boy, I think that will push things forward as well. But this was great, and I'm thrilled that we had our special guests, Dr. Sibyl Swift and Lance Blundell from cbdMD. They joined us on the Move the Stairs podcast. Every week we try and bring great guests, but this was an especially great one, and I'm thrilled that we got to talk to them today. So I hope that you enjoyed it as much as we did, and we look forward to our next Move the Stairs podcast. We'll see